Era uma quarta-feira abafada, quando Larissa apareceu na padaria onde eu trabalhava. Eu estava com farinha até no pescoço, tentando consertar uma fornada de pães que tinha saído torta, quando ouvi aquela voz doce e traiçoeira atrás de mim. Ju! Nossa, quanto tempo! Posso falar com você um minutinho? Fazia mais de um ano desde a última vez que nos falamos. Da última indireta. Do último julgamento disfarçado de preocupação. Ela estava impecável, como sempre. Cabelo escovado, unhas francesinhas, um perfume caro que me lembrava o banheiro da nossa mãe. Mas havia algo diferente. Um ar de fingida fragilidade. A mamãe quer te ver. Ela tem falado muito da lua. Disse que sente falta, que tá arrependida. Arrependida? Minha mãe? Poderia ter rido na cara dela, mas a verdade é que por mais que eu quisesse ser forte, a palavra arrependida mexeu comigo. Porque quem carrega ferida mal cicatrizada sente até o vento como soco. Tentei cortar o assunto ali mesmo. Disse que a Luna estava bem, que a gente não precisava disso. Mas Larissa, como boa manipuladora que sempre foi, usou a carta perfeita. Ju, ela tá tentando mudar. Só queria que vocês vissem isso. Nem que fosse por um domingo. Naquela noite, contei à Luna sobre o convite, achando que ela ia recusar na hora. Mas em vez disso, ela arregalou os olhos e soltou baixinho. Mamãe, será que a vovó ainda lembra de mim? E a tia Lari? Aquilo quebrou algo dentro de mim. Porque mesmo com tudo o que fizeram, minha filha ainda acreditava no melhor das pessoas. E olha, quando uma criança te olha com esperança, não dá para simplesmente dizer não. A gente engole o orgulho, engole até a dor. No domingo seguinte, coloquei o melhor vestidinho na Luna e ela mesma quis levar um presentinho feito por ela. Uma pulseira de miçanga colorida com o nome da Larissa. Enquanto dirigia até a casa da minha mãe, aquela mansão fria cheia de mármore e móveis que ninguém podia encostar, eu repetia para mim mesma: é só um almoço, um dia. Sobrevive, Júlia. Só isso. Mal sabia eu que estava entrando de novo num campo minado. Só que desta vez, quem ia sangrar não era mais eu. They all stared. Lucas leaned back in his chair with a smirk. Did he leave you a recipe card or something? Mom gave a short, uncomfortable laugh, quickly swallowed by silence. Even Dad paused mid-sentence, eyes narrowing like the letter had personally insulted him. I placed the envelope gently into my notebook and closed the cover. Continue, I said quietly. They did, or tried to. But the air had shifted, like something sacred had slipped through the cracks in their careful planning. They went on discussing quarterly forecasts, land rights, rebranding timelines. And I sat there with the letter. But my mind was somewhere else entirely. It drifted back to Sundays on the porch swing. Grandpa William's old cabin in Wisconsin. The wooden beams, the sound of his boots on the porch, and the warmth of his flannel against my cheek when I leaned in for a hug. He used to call Lucas the Hammer. But me? You're the hinge, Em, he said once. Quiet parts don't get credit, but they hold the whole damn door. No one in my family ever quoted that. Growing up, the distance between my brother and me wasn't years, it was legacy. He got fencing lessons and sailing trips. I got sent to etiquette camp, where I learned how to smile through being invisible. At 12, I built a fully functioning solar lamp for the science fair. Dad looked at it once and said, "You'll make a nice teacher someday." At 16, I found out Lucas had been gifted stock options for his birthday. I got a charm bracelet, gold-plated, not real. At 18, I interned at Foster & Drake. On my third day, my ID badge didn't scan. I was told I was never on the system. You must have misunderstood, the HR lady said with a smile, like I'd imagined it all. So I left, quietly. I learned how to disappear in plain sight, how to make myself small so no one could take anything else from me. But even in silence, I noticed things. Mom used to say things like, "Lucas just has the leadership instinct, you know?" Or, "You're a sweet girl, Amelia. Don't worry about the hard stuff. It's not for everyone." I never asked what she meant by everyone. Back in the boardroom, the voices sounded distant again. The letter still pressed against my thigh like it had a heartbeat. I glanced at that night. I couldn't sleep. The envelope sat on my desk, unopened. Its weight was unbearable in its lightness. Just paper, really. But heavy with something I couldn't name. I kept running my fingers along the seal. Grandpa's wax stamp, a small W pressed into navy blue. I remembered the last voicemail I didn't get. My roommate in college said someone called our dorm phone, an old landline we barely used. She picked up, but they hung up. Later, I found a handwritten note in my sock drawer. It said, "Tell Amelia I'm proud of her. She knows why." Signed, WF. I asked my mother about it once. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, folding laundry. "Your grandfather got confused near the end. He thought you were studying engineering or something. Don't take it to heart." I was studying renewable design. He knew. 2 months after his funeral, I tried to retrieve a box of his journals he promised me. They were gone. "Probably donated," Dad said, barely looking up from his coffee. "But they had notes," I insisted. He told you a lot of things, Amelia." Mom cut in, too sharp. "He was sentimental. You know how that generation was." But it wasn't sentiment. It was intention. About a week before the letter arrived, a woman had called the front desk of the firm asking for me. She wouldn't leave her name. Said she used to work with William Foster. "Tell Amelia the puzzle isn't finished." The receptionist thought it was spam. Didn't tell me until days later, casually, over lunch. Something had been tapping me on the shoulder for months. I'd chalked it up to grief, wishful thinking. But what if I'd been wrong? The next morning, I walked to the park Grandpa used to take me to. I sat on our bench, peeled the envelope open with care, and unfolded the pages inside. The first line stopped my breath. "If you're reading this, they've already begun." Each word felt like a lighthouse beam cutting through the fog. He wrote about conversations he overheard, plans my father and uncle made behind closed doors, plans to bypass the clauses of his will by claiming mental decline, plans to divert the trust, to streamline succession to Lucas, calling me sweet but unsuited. He included names, dates, copies, and at the bottom, a line that made my hands shake. "You are the one I trust to protect what matters. This letter is my voice when they try to silence yours." I didn't cry. I just sat there, still, grounded, finally seen. No domingo seguinte, levei Luna até uma igrejinha simples ali no bairro do Tucuruvi. Era o único lugar que eu conhecia que ainda guardava um piano antigo, desses de armário, cheio de arranhões e memórias desafinadas. O zelador me reconheceu de uma vez que toquei ali num casamento comunitário, e gentilmente abriu a porta da salinha nos fundos. Curtis já nos esperava. Camisa social, olhar atento, e aquela presença que não precisava de muitas palavras para se impor. Luna hesitou ao entrar. Ela olhou para o piano, como quem reencontra um amigo que traiu sua confiança. Os dedos bons tremiam. Os outros ainda estavam presos à tala. Mas eu me ajoelhei ao lado dela e sussurrei: "Não precisa tocar tudo. Só toca o que lembrar. Mesmo que seja com uma mão só. Mesmo que sejam só 3 notas." Ela me olhou com olhos marejados e assentiu devagar. Sentou-se, respirou fundo, e então os primeiros sons nasceram. Desajeitados, lentos, inseguros, mas com uma beleza crua, honesta. Como se cada tecla dissesse: "Eu ainda estou aqui." Curtis não disse nada, mas eu vi seus olhos brilharem. Vi quando ele inclinou levemente a cabeça, como quem reconhece não só talento, mas resistência. Quando Luna terminou, ela virou de lado e sussurrou, sem encarar ninguém. Desculpa se ficou feio. Curtis se aproximou, ajoelhou na altura dela e disse algo que nem eu esperava. Ficou necessário. Depois, se virou para mim com o tom de quem já decidiu. Você vai receber um e-mail meu amanhã. Mas já adianto. Quero apresentar o caso da Luna para um fundo privado de reabilitação musical. São bolsas de estudo para crianças que passaram por traumas. E ainda assim, continuam ouvindo música por dentro. No dia seguinte, como prometido, recebi a carta. Prezada Júlia, informamos que Luna Silva foi indicada com prioridade para uma bolsa integral no Instituto Harmonia, especializado em reabilitação e desenvolvimento musical para crianças em processo de cura emocional. Eu chorei. Mas não foi por tristeza. Foi porque, pela primeira vez, o mundo olhou para minha filha e viu o que eu sempre soube. Ela não era só uma vítima. Ela era um milagre em movimento. Com uma mão só, ela reconectou o que o ódio tentou silenciar. I didn't speak again for a long time. I didn't need to. The room had fallen into a strange kind of hush, one that doesn't follow impact, but anticipation. The corporate attorney cleared his throat and unfolded the second document, the addendum to the will. His tone was measured, legally detached, but I could hear the shift in every syllable. This document, signed and notarized, allocates primary decision-making power of the Foster Foundation to Amelia Foster. Effective immediately. Lucas scoffed. You've got to be kidding me. But the lawyer kept going, a silent metronome. No commentary, just facts, just Grandpa's voice, translated into law, control of the foundation, distribution rights over charitable investments, 24% of company voting shares. The room stiffened like someone had just punched out the air. Dad was the first to break. This is an outdated file. William had no idea what he was doing by that point. But the attorney didn't blink. I have medical assessments from 2 separate doctors confirming full cognitive function on the date of signing. He was sound, sharp, and deliberate. I could feel the heat rising in my chest. Not from rage, but clarity. This wasn't revenge. This was restoration. Uncle Gerald shifted in his seat. I thought you wanted to stay out of the family mess, Amelia, he said lightly. This doesn't feel like you. No, I replied calmly. It feels like him. I reached into my bag, pulled out the USB, and slid it toward the screen on the wall. The lawyer hesitated, then nodded, and then Grandpa's voice filled the room. If you're hearing this, then they're pretending again. Pretending they didn't hear me, didn't see her, didn't know the truth. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Lucas stopped smirking. Emilia showed up when others stayed home. She held the door open when others slammed it shut. She remembered my name when I was starting to forget my own. Silence. This company is full of ambition, but she's full of care, and that's what survives longest. No one said anything for a long time. I watched each of them, not with anger, just knowing. Because when someone finally sees you, really sees you, you stop needing to prove anything. And that's when the real shift begins. I don't remember standing up, but suddenly, I was on my feet, facing the people who had looked through me my whole life. My mother was still staring at the screen, like it might flicker and change the truth. My father's jaw clenched so tight I could hear the muscle click. Lucas just looked lost. The lawyer closed the file and leaned back. Per the documents, he said, Emilia has full authority over the foundation, and her voting shares position her as a significant stakeholder in Foster and Drake Holdings. Another silence. But this one was heavier, like something had ended, quietly but completely. I turned to face them, all of them, and for once, they had no choice but to see me. "I never wanted your chair," I said. "I never asked for power. I just wanted to be acknowledged." No one moved. I stayed quiet for so long. I sat at tables that weren't mine, laughed at jokes that hurt me, let myself be told who I was and who I wasn't. I looked at Dad. "You told me I wasn't built for pressure, but Grandpa saw what you didn't." His eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. I turned to Mom. "You said I was sweet, not strong? That I wouldn't understand legacy? But legacy isn't about bloodlines. It's about integrity." I stepped toward Lucas last. He looked like a child suddenly too tall for the clothes he'd been handed. "I don't want your seat, Lucas. I want the room you locked." No one stopped me when I picked up the foundation keys. No one objected when I announced my plan to review all charitable disbursements. And when I left the room, for the first time in my life, no one asked me to stay behind. Outside the boardroom, the receptionist looked up and smiled. "Miss Foster?" I blinked. "Yes?" "There's someone waiting for you in the courtyard. Says her name is Lillian, Grandpa's old assistant. I hadn't seen her in 5 years." I stepped out, and there she was, gray braid, still elegant, still sharp. She handed me a leather-bound journal. Grandpa's, the one I thought had been lost. "It was always meant for you," she said softly. Inside was a single line written in pencil. "Truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to stay." When I returned home that night, the city lights felt different. Not brighter, just quieter. Like they were no longer trying to blind me, only accompany me. I didn't hear from my parents for 3 days. Then the calls came. First, a clipped voicemail from my mother. "Emilia, we need to talk. You blindsided us." Then a text from Dad. "We're disappointed. This isn't what Grandpa would have wanted." I stared at the screen for a long time, then turned it over on the table. No response. They weren't trying to understand, only to regain control. On the 4th day, I received a call from the family estate. My grandfather's old gardener, Dwayne, wanted to see me. We met by the greenhouse. His hands were still calloused, shirt half-buttoned, eyes gentle like always. "I was told not to speak to you," he said. "But I remember what he said, Miss M." "What did he say?" I asked. Dwayne wiped sweat from his brow. "He said, 'They'll fight over my money, but she'll fight for my name.'" I blinked fast. "You were never invisible to him," Dwayne added. "He just kept his plans quiet, like all the good ones do." That same afternoon, I received a legal letter. Lucas was contesting the will, claimed I manipulated a man with declining health. But when the case reached probate court, everything fell apart for them. The video recording, the medical evaluations, the untouched journal in my hands, and one more twist Grandpa had kept tucked away. A separate clause stating that any heir who contested the validity of the will would be removed from all discretionary benefits. Lucas froze in court when it was read aloud. My mother turned pale. My father just sat down. After the hearing, I found myself standing face to face with them in the marble hallway. My mother reached out, touching my arm softly. "Emilia, you don't have to keep pushing us." After the hearing, things didn't explode. They dissolved. No media scandal, no family showdown at the mansion. Just an unspoken retreat, each of them stepping back into their corners of silence. And I let them. Not out of cruelty, out of clarity. I didn't need their apology. I needed space to breathe without holding my breath. The first thing I did was change the locks on the foundation offices. The second thing I did was pull out the blueprint Grandpa and I once sketched on the back of a napkin. We were sitting at his kitchen table. He had flour on his sleeves from baking. I was 16, and furious that my senior project got rejected for being too ambitious. I wanted to build a clean water system using hydroponic waste filtration. He just smiled and said, "Let's draft it anyway." He kept that napkin. Turns out, he also framed it. It now hangs in the lobby of the Foster Renewal Center. I didn't rename the foundation. That would have been too easy. I rebuilt it. We shifted all future grants toward sustainability, education, and urban tech innovation. No more gala dinners for the board. No more legacy backpats. Just real work. I hired young engineers, students with strange ideas, first-gen kids like me, whose voices weren't trained to interrupt. We filled the hallways with whiteboards and music and the smell of burnt toast from someone always messing with the office toaster. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like home. One evening, I found myself sorting through an old storage box Grandpa left behind. Photos, receipts, and one tattered spiral notebook. On the first page, in his handwriting, "To Amelia, because you asked the questions no one else did." I ran my hand over the paper. He remembered. Spring came slowly that year. Chicago thawed in soft layers. Windows cracked open, tulips forcing their way through stubborn soil, and light shifting across the Foster Renewal Center's wide glass atrium. I came in early most mornings. The building felt different when empty. Peaceful. Not silent in the way of fear, but of choice. I'd walk the halls barefoot sometimes, sipping coffee, letting the echoes remind me that this space once didn't exist. That I once didn't exist. At least not in their version of the future. But I was here now. And so was everything Grandpa believed in. We held a memorial for him, an unofficial one. Not the funeral with speeches and rehearsed eulogies. This was quiet. Just a small circle of people who actually knew him. Dwayne came, wearing his old gardening apron. Lillian brought homemade cider, like she always used to. And I read one of his favorite passages from a letter he once mailed me at summer camp. Some people build empires, others plant gardens. The gardens always last longer. We planted an elm tree that day, a young one. Not for what was, but for what could still be. Weeks later, a girl named Zoe came into the center. 14. Foster care. Quiet, angry, brilliant. She reminded me of me. I watched her sketch a model of a solar-powered desalination system on a napkin, almost identical to mine from back then. When I asked if she wanted to build it, she blinked in disbelief. "No one ever lets me." "Then it's time they do," I told her. She didn't smile. Not right away. But she stayed. That became the rhythm. Not grand speeches. Just ordinary revolutions. One girl, I woke early the morning we launched the mentorship program. The city hadn't stretched yet. Streets were still yawning. Sunlight spilled slowly across the lake, gold bleeding into gray. I stepped out onto the rooftop of the center, barefoot, coffee in hand. Wind kissed my cheeks. Not cold, just real. Below, students began to arrive. Some walked, some ran. One kid skateboarded across the pavement with a laptop strapped to his back. And I smiled, because none of this had to exist. And yet, here it was. Born not from inheritance, but from intention. Inside, the framed photo of Grandpa sat near the reception desk. His eyes forever squinting into the sun, one arm around me, the other holding that ridiculous compass keychain I now kept in my bag. I still carried it, still turned it in my palm when I felt unsure. He never taught me to chase approval. He taught me to stay true, to return to the part of myself that never needed a spotlight, just a voice. As the building filled with chatter and electricity and quiet acts of brilliance, I walked back to my office. The wind followed me through the glass. I paused at the doorway, looked around, breathed in the peace that came not from winning, but from not needing to win anymore. from choosing who I became when no one was watching. I picked up my journal and wrote the final line for the morning's entry. He didn't leave me money. He left me space to be. Then I closed the book and opened the door. This story isn't about revenge. It's about reclamation, of self, of voice, of purpose. It's a reminder that being unseen doesn't mean you're unworthy. Some relationships are roots, others are weights. And when we stop seeking permission to matter, we begin again, brighter, freer, whole. See you again